In this video, I just want to explain a little bit about the on-screen display feature of Betaflight. It's both a sort of a troubleshooting and a setup tutorial. So for this video, what you're going to need, if you want to follow along, is your Tyrant S racing drone. You're going to need that connected to Betaflight with a USB cable. You'll need the VTX aerial or VTX antenna connected to your drone as well. You'll need a charged battery for the drone, and you'll need your goggles, your FPV goggles, and a charged battery as well. So what you need to do is power up your goggles on the same channel as your drone. I would strongly recommend removing the propellers from your drone before you proceed with this, because you are going to need to have the power connected. You should always remove the propellers for safety if you're messing around with the configuration of your drone whilst you've got a battery connected. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in my drone. And I've got my goggles plugged in and powered up as well. And I'm going to connect to the flight controller via USB. So here I go, connect to that. Now, from a troubleshooting point of view, what you may have noticed when you first powered your drone up and connected to the FPV video feed using your goggles, you might have noticed that the screen was covered in characters, just blocking the whole screen, and so you couldn't see anything. And that's because of the font that's used on the on-screen display by default. So if you go to the OSD tab here in Betaflight, and here we have all of the on-screen display settings. The first thing we need to do is change the font so that you can see what you're doing. And so go down to the font manager at the bottom right and change the font to any of the other ones. I mean, you can have a play with the different ones here, bold, large, extra large, and so on. Have a play with them and see which one you prefer. It doesn't really matter. So for the purpose of this one, I'm going to go with the Clarity font. And then press upload. And you'll see you get a little status bar there, which is updating the font information. It takes a few seconds. And after this happens, your flight controller will reboot. It needs to, there we go, so it's automatically disconnected me and rebooted, so you may need to click reconnect. And you can go back to OSD. Now the first thing you might notice, if you look through your goggles, you should now be able to see clearly, and there'll probably be a lot of data on the screen. So this is now a good time to explain what the on-screen display is. So the on-screen display is a way of the flight controller sending some data to the video transmitter, which is in turn then sent to your goggles, so you can see live data from the drone. Betaflight is capable of sending quite a lot of different pieces of information, and a huge amount of them are not relevant at all to a racing drone, especially a sort of a relatively simple racing drone like the Tyrant S that we use in Engineers. So the first thing you want to probably do, you'll notice that all of these are probably selected by default, is use the switch all button and switch them off. So initially they'll all be on and you'll have all this crazy information here, lots and lots and lots of it. Switch them all off and we'll switch on a few useful ones, and I'll kind of explain what they are as we go. Now ignore the Betaflight logo. I mean, you can switch that off here, but all that does is it switch, when you first power up, you'll see the Betaflight logo on screen temporarily, and it will disappear once you start running. So here's some interesting things that we can add. So the crosshairs, this just puts a little sort of dot in the middle of the screen there. Quite useful when you're learning, because it's just a reference that keeps your eyes in the middle of the screen and helps you sort of navigate. Again, with the next one down, the artificial horizon, this is similar, and the same with the sidebar. So the artificial horizon, what this does is it places this line here that stays level with the horizon as you move the drone. So you switch that on and have a look and see what it does. When you're starting out, it's quite useful as a reference to help you sort of know where level is all of the time, where the horizon is. As you get better, you'll probably end up actually switching that off. So I'm gonna leave it off on mine just because it clutters the screen up a little bit. Now timer 1 and timer 2, these are pretty useful. I think the second one here by default is more useful. So timer 1 and timer 2 reference these two boxes over here. So here's timer 1 and here's timer 2, and you can see by default timer 2 is the total armed time. So that's the time that your drone is armed and the propellers are running for. This is kind of useful to know because you just know how long you've actually been flying for and how long you've been drawing power for. So I'm going to switch that on. And you can see yours probably isn't down here in the bottom right. This is where I like it, but you can grab it and drag it anywhere on the screen, put it where you want it. So I quite like it down here. And so that's going to tell me how long I've been flying for, basically. Fly mode tells you whether you're in horizon, angle, and all this kind of stuff. I don't think you really need to know that because you probably will sort of be aware of what mode you've put it in. Craft name puts the name of your drone on the screen, and that's configured in the configuration, so you can give your drone a name in the configuration tab. Throttle position, just what it says on the tin, I'm not going to use that. But some other useful ones down here are milliamp hours drawn, MAH drawn. I like to have this one on. This shows you how much current the drone has drawn from the battery during your flight, so it's quite a nice indicator of how much power you've been using. And you've got a whole bunch of other stuff down here that you can play with, but none of these are, I would say, particularly useful. You might like to put the Disarmed Flag on. I'm going to put that right in the middle of the screen here. So when your drone is disarmed, that will be on the screen just to advise you that it's disarmed. And as soon as you arm it, that will disappear. The other thing that's quite nice to do is post-flight statistics. So you can select and deselect those over here. So these are the ones that I've got on. What was the minimum battery level that I got down to? How much current did I draw at the maximum time? So basically when you're on full throttle, punching out from the bottom of a flip or a steep dive, that's probably when your max current was going to be drawn. How many milliamp hours were used during that, so the battery capacity that was used during that flight. And then I like to show timer 1 and timer 2. So timer 1 is how long the battery's been plugged in for, and timer 2 is how long I was armed for and actually flying. And so when you complete your flight and disarm, these statistics will be shown on the screen until you rearm again, which is quite nice. So once you've set all of those and you've got them in the place on the screen that you like, actually I'm just going to add the voltage, because that's kind of useful. So main battery voltage. So this shows the current battery voltage from your main drone battery. And so you should be able to hear your warning bleeper that you've already configured for that. But it gives you a visual indication of the voltage of the battery whilst you're flying. So once you've got it how you like it, hit the save button, and if you look through your goggles, you should see the display as you've configured it. And if you're happy with that, you can leave it. If you need to move anything around, just grab it and drag it. So if you can't quite see it, if it's too close to the edge, drag it to where you want it and release it, and then click save again. But the on-screen display is a really useful feature and can send you some useful information during flight.